Welcome! So great for you to join me today. I'm going to be bringing you another wonderful, amazing episode about tea. So, my name is Jenny. I'm the owner and founder of Sipping Streams Tea Company, an international award-winning tea company. I am a certified tea specialist with the Specialty Tea Institute. I am actually Chinese. I was born in Hong Kong, but I am here in Fairbanks, Alaska now, and I love teaching about tea. And if you're watching right now, let me know you're here. Go ahead, write in the comments that you're watching and what kind of tea you're drinking. If you're having a certain kind of tea right now, let me know where you're watching from. I love to know where you're watching from and love to interact with you and answer any of the questions that you have for me. So today's topic is on the mini Tuo Cha Pu'erh. Now, did you know that pu'erh is a huge category of teas? Just like green tea is a huge category of tea, green tea isn't just one tea. It's hundreds of different types of tea. Pu'erh isn't one kind of pu'erh in that category. There are hundreds of kinds of different kinds of styles of pu'erhs. And today we're going to be specifically talking about the mini Tuo Cha Pu'erh. So if you're Cantonese or Mandarin, the translation, the dialects are a little bit different on the topic of pu'erh, or in Cantonese, it'd be called bo lei cha. So bo lei or pu'erh is this type of tea that is this dark tea that is the fifth type of tea. It's the fifth category of tea. So we've got white tea, green tea, oolong, black, and pu'erh. And pu'erh goes through a whole different process that actually kind of moistens or encourages moisture in the tea to encourage microbes to grow in it. And it is the truly fermented dark black tea. When you brew it in a cup or when you steep it in a cup, it looks almost black. But it can also look as light as a green tea. It might not come out green, but there's such a huge spectrum of pu'erh tea. So you might get pu'erh in loose leaf, right? You might see that in like some places and not realize that traditionally it comes in a can. Hey Christina, thank you so much for joining us from North Pole, Alaska. You might have heard of brick tea before, right? So a brick of tea, and not all brick teas are pu'erh tea. This was a special commemorative brick of tea that I got in 2013. It has the date stamped on it still. April of 2013 was when it was made, April 18th specifically, for the special pu'erh International Conference that I went to, and we all got a commemorative pu'erh brick, literally the shape of a brick. So pu'erh comes in so many shapes and sizes, and this is actually made as the process of pu'erh. Then you could also get it in, like today, we're going to be talking about the mini Tuo Cha. It might come in a little white paper wrapper like this, but it is the pu'erh cake that looks like a little button, like an old traditional Chinese button. Kind of cute. And it looks like it's got a little dimple on the inside, or like a little top. Some people call it like a top. Then traditionally, most famously, the shape of pu'erh comes in a cake, like a round cake. So here I'll show you the special pu'erh cake that I have in this fancy box. This fancy pu'erh cake. Hey, thank you so much for joining me today. Let me know where you're watching from and what kind of questions you have about pu'erh. So traditionally, it comes in a cake that is compressed. And there actually will be, if you open up the paper, a little dimple right here. Just like this pu'erh little mini cake has a little dimple on the inside. So if you have the mini Tuo Cha Pu'erh in your subscription box, go ahead and open it up and check it out and inspect it. But this is the traditional size and shape, and this would be pu'erh bing cha. So it's like the cake shape. You can also get pu'erh that are stuffed in things like bamboo and stuffed inside it and compressed that way. You could find pu'erh also in mandarin orange peels and things like that. But today we'll be going specifically over the mini Tuo Cha Pu'erh, and this is actually processed with an extra step to make it darker, more earthy tasting faster. Let me show you here on our camera the little dimple right there. And you can try to break it open with a pu'erh knife like this. It looks kind of like a letter opener. It's very sharp. But the thing is, though, it is so small and round that typically you might hurt yourself. So you would either want to open it on a surface like this and kind of like chip away at it. And it kind of flakes. And you start to separate the tea leaves. Don't stick your finger right there. You might stab your finger. But this is actually an official pu'erh knife. And you can break chunks of it off like this and flake it off. And you can try to weigh it out in 2.5 grams, but traditionally it is usually just all drank at once. So we're going to just stick the whole thing in my Yixing clay pot. I have purple clay pots. Okay? And we're going to adjust its time. So like if I weigh this out right now, if I was to weigh out my pu'erh and see how much it was, it is 5 grams. So it's twice as much as a serving, and this vessel is maybe only 8 grams. So I definitely need to cut my steeping time in half. I need to adjust it and put less time, otherwise it's going to be incredibly strong. I use boiling hot water. And I'm going to just do a quick rinse of everything. Okay? So I'm going to rinse my pitcher. I'm rinsing my tea off on the inside. I'm rinsing out everything really quickly. Ooh, I guess the tea's getting a little stuck in there by the spout. I'm going to rinse my cups. And this is traditionally what's done in the Chinese tea. And I'm only going to steep this because the volume size is in half. I only want to steep it for maybe like a minute. And you can already smell the aromatics of like slightly truffly, woodsy, mossy type of a tea. So I can just have it sit here for like 1 minute. Alexa, set a timer for 1 minute. I'm gonna just let it steep. Starting now. So when you are making pu'erh, the same rule applies. You want to make sure it's the proper weight. So since this mini teapot is so small, I might end up making it too strong. This is only maybe 6 to 8 ounces at most. And I put in 2 servings in there. So I only want to steep it for a very short amount of time. And when I steep it, I will need to make sure that I decant all of it. Otherwise, it keeps brewing in its little pot. And some people really like it and some people don't, but there's a huge variety of pu'erhs. There's some pu'erhs that are made from very white tea leaves, very downy, very large white type of tea leaves, and some people call it white pu'erh or white moon pu'erh, and it will give it a very vegetal flavor actually. Alexa, stop. And with that vegetal flavor, you might notice that it doesn't taste as dark, and you might be surprised, but the signature flavor of pu'erhs will be this musty, earthy flavor, no matter if it's light or very strong and pungent. And some people really, really like that flavor. So this pu'erh tea went through an extra process where it was kind of heated up a little bit, and sometimes it's called chow, or sorry, my Cantonese is confusing me when I switch back and forth for Tino terminology, but chow or shao, or sometimes people call it show. but or red or cooked pu'erh. This would be a cooked or red pu'erh, and in Chinese, essentially, it means cooked. And if you want like a fresh or bright pu'erh that would be less musty, so it takes longer through its natural aging process. That less musty type of pu'erh is sometimes called uncooked or green, but in Chinese it kind of means like bright, kind of like vegetable bright, fresh. And it doesn't go through that extra process for accelerating its flavor for that dark that a lot of people really appreciate in pu'erh teas. Oh, so good. I'm so glad I ended my day with this. Now there is caffeine in pu'erh, and this pu'erh mini Tuo Cha is going to make so much tea. I should probably put it in a container and show you how it hasn't even opened up all the way. I could probably make 6 to 8 cups of this little pot for myself. That's a lot of tea. So let me show you on something clear. When I dig out the tea leaves, it literally hasn't expanded at all. It is still compressed in this little ball. It's still super thick. It's steaming. It's hardly opened at all. Even the little piece that I broke off is still in a complete nugget shape. It hasn't even separated its tea leaves yet. So if you see here, this whole nugget of tea is still all super tight together. Like I said, you could probably re-steep it up 6, maybe 8 times in your teacup, teapot, whatever you're going to make it in. It's going to make a lot of tea. So don't forget, if you have a dark teapot like this, a non-translucent one, you might have some really good tea in there that's going to go moldy because it's going to hold in all that moisture in there still, right? It's rehydrated. So you do want to remember to drink all of your pu'erh tea. Maybe you'll have to have a friend and share your tea with them and have a tea time with them. So in our subscription box, we have gone over pu'erh cakes that are rare green pu'erh cakes. We've gone over this mini Tuo Cha. We've had loose leaf tea pu'erh. And so there's so many different kinds that are raw, that are cooked, ones with flowers in them. We have so many different varieties of pu'erh in sipping streams, and we usually don't sell them online, but at least you got to partake today in what the mini Tuo Cha is. And so when you see these little nuggets now wrapped with paper, just remember, it is a type of tea that's been compacted, compressed, and aged like a wine, but it goes through a re-moistening process that isn't for shaping it necessarily, but is to encourage microbes in growing in it, and then they dry it, or mostly dry it, kind of put it in an environment that is a little bit humid, but not too humid, to slowly encourage the growth of the microbes. So it's really good for digestion, really good for cholesterol, and it's just for hundreds of years been shown to have a lot of health benefits that the Chinese really appreciate. Some people even like it for weight loss too. Now remember, this is still the Camellia sinensis plant. It will still have some of the health benefits of green tea, of white tea, of oolong tea, of black tea, because it is from the same plant still. But just because it's a brick of tea, so people have dropped off bricks of tea that were decorative to me, and they're like, oh, I heard it's this really rare tea or whatever. Honestly, you can make a compressed chunk of tea out of anything. It does not mean it actually went through that extra process that's going to give it that signature musty flavor and give you the health benefits that are good for your bloodstream and good for your digestion and for breaking down fats and things like that, and your cholesterol. If it's just a brick of tea, you can just get a brick of tea and it's just tea that's been compressed, or you could get a specialized pour, whether it's in the shape of a brick, whether it is loose leaf, whether it is a form of a big cake like it traditionally is. Um, it is still goes through the same specialized process. And I hope you do experiment with different types of pu'ers there. But if you haven't yet tried a uncooked pu'er, unlike this one is a cooked pu'er, try an uncooked pu'er, and you might be surprised in some of the flavor from that it doesn't taste as dark and as earthy and as musty, depending on its aging process. There are peak years, like about the ninth year, that is a really, really good green or uncooked pour when it's kind of like elevated its agingness. And you always want to rinse off the pour right away because if you can see here, it's just stored in a piece of paper. It's kind of porous. So if it's next to your onions in your cupboard or your pantry, it might kind of taste like onions on the outside. And especially if you're aging it and keeping it for a long time, rinsing it is always a very safe thing to do. It could be dusty, it could have who knows what on it. So rinsing it off with boiling hot water is really, really good for you. And don't forget to do steep it with boiling hot water or close to boiling hot water. Rinse it first and then steep it depending on how much you're putting in there. I usually recommend 1 to 2 minutes because some people get such a punchiness from their pour that is highly concentrated and almost ruined depending on the kind of pour. If it's a more greener pour, you might want a slightly lower temperature, like 200 degrees and a lower steeping time. When you have like a greener pour, so like a whiter pour than a greener pour, now you're seeing that's paralleling with how we make tea, right? So a greener pour, you might also want like a lower steeping time so it doesn't extract as quickly into your cup. So there are different things that you can do to modify your appreciation of your final end cup. You can change the time, you can change the temperature of the water, and you can change the amount that you put in. So those are 3 factors that could possibly influence how your end cup is going to be. So thank you everyone for joining me on this video about our mini Tuo Cha Pu'erh that's offered at Sipping Streams. This is one you can also buy online at sippingstreams.com. And if you have not already signed up at the 5 Days of Tea Transformational Challenge that starts next Monday, which is free 5-day tea intensive course by me from us at Sipping Streams. We designed this for those of you who are interested in learning more about tea. And if you haven't already and are signed up for the challenge, please, please share it out with your friends and family. And make sure if you put it on social media to hashtag 5 Days of Tea and hashtag Sipping Streams so we know that you shared it out for us. Also, don't forget we give away free prizes every day when you do your homework and your bonus challenges. You get brownie points for getting in on free prizes every day. So check it out, bit.ly/5 days of tea. And I hope you join us next time for another amazing episode on tea. Thank you, everyone.